They erased my name, Maya, like I never existed. Those words, spoken in a mother's trembling voice, unveiled a betrayal buried for decades. Welcome to Legacy Reclaimed, where Colonel Evelyn Harper, a Black Air Force hero, faces the sting of a Southern institution's hidden prejudice at her daughter Maya's Haverford graduation. In a tale woven with family heartache, unyielding dignity, and a fight to unearth long-suppressed truth, Evelyn and Maya confront a university that tried to erase her legacy. Will their stand against systemic racism reunite a fractured family and rewrite history? Or will old wounds and institutional denial prevail? From the heart of Chicago's ivy-clad quad, this story stirs the soul like a Sunday sermon, reminding us of the resilience that binds kin and community. If you believe in standing tall for justice, hit that subscribe button and join our storytelling family. Share your thoughts below. Have you ever fought to reclaim what's yours? Now, let's step into Evelyn's journey, where courage meets legacy on a day that changed everything. You weren't there when I needed you, Mom, so why should I need you now? The words burned into Evelyn Harper's mind as she sat alone in her modest Chicago apartment, the glow of her phone screen casting a stark light across her weathered face. The message from her daughter, Maya, wasn't new. It had been sent 3 years ago, the last time they'd spoken. But tonight, June 10th, 2024, it felt like a fresh wound, reopened by a new text that had arrived just minutes ago. Graduation Haverford, December 6th, 2024, 9 a.m. No greeting, no invitation to celebrate, just cold, clipped facts. Evelyn, 62, a retired Air Force colonel and one of the first Black female fighter pilots in U.S. history, felt her heart clench. The silence of her apartment seemed to amplify the absence of warmth in those words, echoing the decades of distance that had fractured her bond with her only child. The apartment was a shrine to Evelyn's 35-year career, its walls lined with shadow boxes displaying medals, the Distinguished Service Medal, the Air Medal, commendations for valor in Iraq and Afghanistan. A faded photograph showed her in her flight suit, standing proud beside an F-16, her eyes fierce with determination. But the room held no family portraits, no snapshots of birthdays or holidays. The only trace of Maya was a small, dog-eared photo tucked on a bookshelf, a 5-year-old girl in a sparkly pink dress, clutching a stuffed bear, her eyes searching beyond the camera for someone who wasn't there. Evelyn hadn't been there for that school pageant, just as she missed countless milestones, deployed halfway across the globe. Duty had demanded everything, and she'd given it willingly, believing the sacrifices were for a greater good. Now, in the quiet of retirement, each absence felt like a stone in her chest, heavy and unyielding. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she traced the edges of the photo. "Why now, Maya?" she wondered. The text felt like a summons, not an olive branch, yet it stirred something deep within her, a flicker of hope, fragile but persistent. She closed her eyes, and a memory surfaced, sharp and vivid. 3 years ago, at a tense coffee shop meeting, Maya, then 21, had lashed out, "You weren't there when I needed you, Mom, so why should I need you now?" The words had cut deeper than any battlefield injury because they were true. Evelyn had been a hero to her country, but a stranger to her daughter. She'd promised herself she'd make it right, but every call went unanswered, every letter returned unopened. This text, impersonal as it was the first crack in that wall of silence. She set the phone down and stood, her movements deliberate, as if steeling herself for a mission. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, its rhythm a reminder of time slipping away. Evelyn walked to her closet, pulling out her Air Force dress uniform, still pristine after 3 years in storage. She ran her fingers over the silver wings pinned to the chest, the weight of each medal a testament to battles fought and won against enemies abroad and prejudice at home. As a Black woman in the Air Force, She'd faced skepticism at every rank, her competence questioned, her promotions scrutinized. She'd answered with excellence, flying missions with precision, leading squadrons with unwavering resolve. But no medal could bridge the gap between her and Maya. The phone rang, shattering the silence. Evelyn glanced at the screen. Calvin Storm Mitchell, her former wingman, a man whose life she'd saved when their plane took fire over Baghdad. She answered, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Storm, it's late. You checking if I'm still breathing?" Storm's chuckle was warm, familiar. "Just making sure you're ready for the reunion next week, Colonel. Those young bucks at the VFW need to hear your stories." His voice softened. "You sound off. Everything okay?" Evelyn hesitated, her thumb brushing the phone screen where Maya's message lingered. "Maya sent me a text," she said finally. "She's graduating from Haverford this Saturday." Storm let out a low whistle. "Haverford, huh? Fancy place. She invited you." "Sort of." Evelyn's voice caught, betraying the ache she tried to suppress. "Just the date and time. No, please come. No, nothing. I don't know if she even wants me there." There was a pause, the kind that carried the weight of years of camaraderie. "If she sent it, she wants you there," Storm said firmly. "You know how kids are, too proud to say it outright. You going?" Evelyn's gaze drifted to the uniform, its metals glinting in the dim light. "I don't know, Storm. What if I show up and she turns me away?" "I've failed her enough already." "You didn't fail her," Storm said, his tone sharp with conviction. "You were out there keeping us alive. She'll see that someday. But you gotta show up, Evelyn. You're not just her mom, you're Colonel Harper. You don't back down." The words stirred something in Evelyn, a spark of the resolve that had carried her through hostile skies. She nodded, though Storm couldn't see it. "All right, I'll go. But if she slams the door in my face, you're buying the whiskey." "Deal," Storm laughed. "Get some rest, Colonel. You've got a mission." Evelyn hung up, her heart pounding. She lifted the uniform from its hanger, the fabric cool against her fingers. As she polished each medal, she felt the weight of her past decisions, the sacrifices that had cost her a daughter's love. But she also felt a quiet determination, the same fire that had driven her to become a pilot in a world that told her she didn't belong. She would go to Haverford, not as a hero or a colonel, but as a mother keeping a promise made 2 decades ago. "When it matters, Maya, I'll always be there." Later that night, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, a laptop open before her. The Haverford University website loaded, its homepage a glossy showcase of ivy-covered buildings and smiling students. A legacy of excellence, the banner proclaimed, but Evelyn's lips tightened as she scrolled. The site boasted of academic prestige, but there was no mention of the school's darker history, how it had barred black students until 1970, how it had marginalized those who came after. She clicked on the alumni section, searching for her own name, though she knew what she'd find. Nothing. In 1985, Evelyn had graduated at the top of her class in aerospace engineering, one of only 3 black students in her program. She'd written a thesis on gender bias in pilot selection, a work her professors had praised privately but never published. When she'd filed a formal complaint about discriminatory grading practices, the administration had dismissed it, and her name had been quietly erased from the honor rolls. She remembered the sting of that erasure, the way it had felt like a betrayal, not just of her, but of every black student who'd fought to belong. Her mind drifted to a memory from that time, sharp as a blade. She was 22, standing in her cap and gown, her parents beaming in the crowd. But when her name was called, the announcer had mispronounced it, and her photo had been accidentally omitted from the program. She'd swallowed the humiliation, telling herself it didn't matter. She'd gone on to prove them wrong, soaring through the ranks of the Air Force, but the wound had never fully healed. Now, as she read about Haverford's polished present, She wondered if Maya had faced the same invisible barriers, the same subtle dismissals. The thought made her chest tighten, a mix of guilt and resolve. Evelyn opened a new tab, booking a hotel room near Haverford's campus. The confirmation email pinged, and she leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She thought of Maya, her fierce, brilliant daughter who'd chosen psychology over the military, who'd fought her own battles for justice. Evelyn hadn't been there to guide her, but maybe, just maybe, showing up now could be a start. She closed the laptop, her decision made. She would wear her uniform not to flaunt her past, but to honor the woman she'd become, a woman who'd fought for her place in the world and would fight for her daughter's respect. As she turned off the light, the photo of young Maya caught her eye. Evelyn touched it gently, whispering, "I'm coming. Baby girl. I hope you'll let me stay." The morning sun bathed the Haverford University campus in a golden glow, its ivy-clad buildings standing like sentinels of tradition. On June 12, 2024, the quad buzzed with the energy of graduation day, families in pastel dresses and crisp suits, students in black gowns, and the hum of anticipation. Evelyn Harper, 62, strode through the ornate iron gates, her Air Force dress uniform impeccable, each medal gleaming with the weight of her 35-year career. The silver wings on her chest caught the light, but it was her presence, tall, poised, unyielding, that drew eyes. As a black woman in a sea of predominantly white faces, she felt the familiar prickle of scrutiny, the subtle shift in posture from those around her. She'd navigated these waters her entire life, from flight school to combat zones, and today she carried that same resolve. She was here for Maya, her daughter, and no glance or whisper would deter her. Evelyn arrived 90 minutes early, her military punctuality a habit unbroken by retirement. She scanned the rows of white chairs facing the flower-draped stage, choosing a seat near the front with a clear view of the graduate procession. As she settled, a middle-aged couple nearby, a man in a navy blazer and a woman clutching a designer purse, exchanged a glance. The woman leaned closer to her husband, her voice a hushed murmur, "I think there's a veteran section over there." Evelyn's jaw tightened, but her expression remained impassive. She adjusted her cap, the motion deliberate, a silent assertion of her right to be here. The couple hesitated, then gathered their programs and moved 3 rows back, their chairs scraping against the grass. Evelyn's heart sank, not from surprise, but from the weary familiarity of it all. She'd faced this her entire career, white colleagues who questioned her orders, base guards who demanded her ID while waving others through. Each time, she'd responded with dignity, letting her excellence speak louder than their prejudice. Her gaze drifted to the campus security guards patrolling the perimeter, their radios crackling as they moved with practiced efficiency. One guard, a stocky man with a crew cut, kept his eyes on her, speaking into his shoulder mic as he paced. Evelyn noted his badge, Michael Dorsey, Chief of Security. She met his stare briefly, her eyes steady, then turned back to the stage, refusing to give him the satisfaction of discomfort. She pulled out her phone, rereading Maya's text, "Graduation Haverford, December 6th, 2024, 9 a.m. The words were still cold, but they were her tether, her reason for enduring the weight of those watching eyes. She imagined Maya in her gown, her fierce spirit shining through, and a flicker of pride warmed her chest. Maybe today could be a new beginning, a chance to bridge the years of absence. A young usher approached, his clipboard clutched tightly. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone polite but edged with hesitation. "These seats are reserved for family members with official tickets." Evelyn nodded, her voice calm but firm. "I understand. I'm here for my daughter, Maya Harper, graduating in psychology." She opened her phone, showing the text. The usher frowned, his eyes flicking from the screen to her uniform. "This isn't an official invitation, ma'am. All guests should have printed tickets with the university seal. Let me check with my supervisor." As he walked away, Evelyn overheard a conversation behind her, two faculty members, their voices low but not low enough. Another discrimination complaint last semester, one muttered, "Prescott buried it, just like the others." The second, a woman with a clipped accent, replied, "What do you expect?" The trustees care more about donations than reality. Their voices dropped as they noticed Evelyn, but the words lingered, sharp and unsettling. Was Maya part of that complaint? Evelyn wondered, her mind racing. Had her daughter faced the same institutional barriers she had 40 years ago? The thought tightened her throat, a mix of guilt for not being there and anger at the system that seemed unchanged. The usher returned with Michael Dorsey, whose mirrored sunglasses hid his eyes, but not his authoritative stance. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, his voice professionally neutral. "May I see your invitation?" Evelyn handed over her phone, her movements precise. "My daughter, Maya Harper, sent this. She's graduating today." Dorsey examined the text, his lips pursing. "This isn't an official university invitation. All guests need printed credentials with the seal. Security protocols." Evelyn's voice remained level, though her heart pounded. "I'm sure you can verify that Maya Harper is graduating today. I'm her mother, Colonel Evelyn Harper, U.S. Air Force, retired." She produced her military ID, the card worn but unmistakable. Dorsey studied it, then spoke into his radio, his tone hardening. "We've got an uncredentialed guest in Section B. No record under Harper family." He handed back the ID. "Ma'am, without proper credentials, I'll need to ask you to move to the public viewing area." Evelyn stood slowly, her height and military bearing commanding the space. "My daughter invited me," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of decades of defiance. "I have her invitation right here." She held up the phone, the text glowing in the morning light. Dorsey's patience thinned, his hand resting on his radio. "That's not an official document. There are plenty of public seats where you can watch. Let's not make this difficult." A murmur rippled through the nearby crowd, some parents watching with discomfort, others nodding in agreement with Dorsey's enforcement. Evelyn noticed a white family a few rows away, their handwritten note waved through by another guard without question. The double standard stung, but she kept her composure, her training kicking in. She'd faced worse hostile commanders, skeptical subordinates, but this was different. This was about Maya, about keeping a promise. She planted her feet, her stance unyielding. "I'm not moving until you verify with my daughter that I'm welcome." Dorsey's jaw clenched, and he signaled to two additional guards who flanked him like a tactical unit. "Ma'am, you're creating a disturbance. Either relocate voluntarily or we'll escort you out." The guards stepped closer, their hands hovering near their belts. Evelyn's pulse quickened, but her face remained a mask of calm. She'd flown through missile fire, landed planes under enemy attack. She would not be intimidated by a clipboard and a badge. "I've flown through war zones to protect this country," she said, her voice cutting through the morning air. "I will not be removed from my daughter's graduation." The standoff drew more eyes, phones raised to record, the hashtag Haverford incident already trending locally. Evelyn felt the weight of those lenses, the judgment of strangers, but she stood taller, her medals a silent testament to her worth. She thought of Maya, somewhere in the procession, unaware of the scene unfolding. "I promised you I'd be here," she thought, her resolve hardening. "And I'm not leaving." Sylvia Thornton, the dean of students, approached, her administrative regalia marking her authority. She addressed Dorsey, not Evelyn, her tone clipped. "What's the issue here?" Dorsey handed over Evelyn's phone. "This individual lacks proper credentials for family seating." "She's refusing to comply." Thornton barely glanced at the text. "Ma'am, I understand you want to support our graduates, but security protocols are in place for everyone's safety." Official invitations were sent to all approved guests. Evelyn's eyes locked with Thornton's, her voice low but piercing. "If your protocols were applied equally, I wouldn't be the only one singled out. I'm Colonel Evelyn Harper, and my daughter invited me. Verify with her, and I'll gladly follow your rules." Thornton's smile was tight, professional. "The ceremony starts in 15 minutes, Colonel. We don't have time to track down individual students. Please move to the public area." Evelyn remained motionless, her military discipline a shield against the rising tension. "I will see my daughter graduate, Dean Thornton." I promised her that much. Thornton's veneer cracked, her voice sharpening. "This isn't a military base where you can issue orders. If you refuse to comply, we'll involve campus police." A few parents nodded, one muttering about disrupting the ceremony, but others shifted uncomfortably, sensing the injustice. Evelyn's mind flashed to 1985, her own graduation at Haverford, when her name was mispronounced, her achievements buried. She'd fought then, and she'd fight now, not for herself, but for Maya, for the right to be seen as a mother, not a trespasser. "I'm not the disruption," she said quietly, her words carrying the weight of truth. "Your selective enforcement is." The quad fell silent around her, the crowd holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. The Haverford University quad pulsed with the prelude to the graduation ceremony, the university band's processional music swelling as black-gowned students began their march. Evelyn Harper stood resolute in Section B, her Air Force dress uniform a beacon amidst the escalating tension. For campus security guards, led by Chief Michael Dorsey, surrounded her, their hands poised near their belts, radios crackling with urgency. Dean Sylvia Thornton's voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd, sharp and authoritative. "Colonel Harper, this is your final warning. Relocate to the public viewing area or you'll be removed by force." Evelyn's eyes never wavered, her military bearing unshaken. "I'm here for my daughter," she said, her voice low but carrying the weight of a lifetime of defiance. "I'm not moving." The crowd's attention shifted, phones raised, capturing the standoff as #HaverfordIncident trended across social media. Evelyn felt the sting of those lenses, the weight of judgment, but her focus remained singular: Maya. She imagined her daughter in the procession, unaware of the storm unfolding, and her heart ached with the mother's longing to protect, to prove she could be there when it mattered. The guards closed in, Dorsey's hand moving toward her arm. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for trespassing," he declared, his tone loud enough to ensure the crowd heard. Evelyn braced herself, her training kicking in, ready to remain dignified even in handcuffs. From the graduate procession, a voice shattered the tension. "That's my mother." Maya Harper, 24, broke free from the line of students, her black gown billowing as she sprinted across the quad. Her eyes, wide with shock and fury, locked onto the scene, her mother, a decorated colonel, surrounded like a criminal. She shoved past a faculty marshal, ignoring his attempt to guide her back. "Stop. I invited her," she shouted, her voice raw with emotion. The crowd gasped, the music faltering as all eyes turned to the young woman now standing between Evelyn and the guards. Evelyn's breath caught, her stoic facade cracking at the sight of her daughter. Maya's face, so like her own, was a storm of confusion and anger, but beneath it, Evelyn saw something new: pride, flickering like a spark. "Maya," she said softly, her voice trembling for the first time. "I'm sorry if I've caused trouble." Maya shook her head, her eyes glistening. "You're not the trouble, Mom. They are." She turned to Dorsey, her voice rising. "I sent her that text. I didn't know about your stupid ticket rule. You have no right to humiliate my mother." Dorsey's sunglasses hid his expression, but his posture stiffened. "Miss Harper, official guests require printed credentials with the university seal. Return to your place or you'll be removed too." Maya stepped closer, undaunted, her activist spirit blazing. "I'm not going anywhere until you let her stay. She's my mother, and she belongs here." The crowd murmured, some parents nodding in support, others whispering about protocol. Evelyn's heart swelled, a mix of pride and guilt. She'd missed so much of Maya's life, yet here was her daughter, fighting for her with a courage that mirrored her own. The standoff intensified, Dorsey signaling for campus police to join the scene. 2 officers approached, their hands resting on their equipment belts, assessing the situation. Evelyn remained still, but her mind raced. She'd faced prejudice her entire career, white instructors who doubted her skills, commanders who questioned her promotions, but this was personal. This was her daughter's moment, and she would not let it be tainted by the same injustices she'd endured. She met Maya's gaze, a silent promise passing between them. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Across the quad, Calvin Storm Mitchell, 55, watched the scene unfold from Section D, where he'd come to see his niece graduate. His eyes narrowed as he recognized Evelyn, his former commander, standing tall against the guards. Storm's hand moved to his phone, his fingers flying across the screen as he sent a message to a private group chat of Air Force veterans. Colonel Harper detained. Section B, Haverford Grad Quad. Unauthorized action in progress. Move now. Within seconds, responses flooded in from 5 others: Javier Hawk Morales, Denise Blaze Thompson, Tyrone Ghost Reynolds, Leonard Doc Simmons, and Carla Viper Nguyen, all present for their own family members. They'd served under Evelyn in the most grueling missions, owed her their lives, and now they moved as one. Storm reached Section B first, his civilian clothes belying the military precision in his stride. The others followed, forming a subtle but unmistakable protective perimeter around Evelyn and Maya. Storm stepped forward, his voice carrying the natural authority of a man who'd flown beside her in combat. "This is Colonel Evelyn Harper," he announced, loud enough for the crowd to hear. One of the first black female fighter pilots in Air Force history. She saved my life in Iraq, and you're treating her like a trespasser. The guards hesitated, their confidence wavering under the weight of his words. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, phones capturing every moment. Hawk Morales, a wiry man with sharp eyes, positioned himself to Evelyn's left, his voice calm but firm. "You're making a mistake, Chief Dorsey. Colonel Harper has a congressional commendation for valor. You're about to turn this into a national scandal." Blaze Thompson, a woman with a steely gaze, stood to Evelyn's right, her presence a quiet threat. Ghost, Doc, and Viper completed the formation, their coordinated movements a silent testament to years of training. The campus police officers exchanged uncertain glances, sensing the shift in dynamics. These weren't civilians, they were warriors, and their loyalty to Evelyn was palpable. Evelyn's chest tightened, a surge of gratitude mixing with the weight of the moment. She hadn't seen these men and women in years, yet here they were, standing for her as she'd stood for them. She glanced at Maya, whose eyes widened as she took in the scene. "Who are they?" Maya whispered, her voice a mix of awe and confusion. Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest smile. "My team," she said simply, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "They're family, too." Maya's gaze lingered on her mother's uniform, the medals glinting in the sunlight. For the first time, she saw not just her mother, but a hero, a woman who'd shattered barriers, who'd risked everything for others. The realization hit her like a wave, softening the edges of years of resentment. "You never told me," she said, her voice barely audible. Evelyn's eyes softened. "I didn't want you to carry my battles, Maya. I wanted you to have your own." Dorsey's patience snapped, his voice rising. "This is a university function, not a military operation. Everyone, disperse, or you'll all be arrested for causing a disturbance." He reached for his radio, calling for additional backup, but Storm stepped forward, producing his military ID. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Calvin Mitchell, retired. Cuff her, and you'll be explaining to every news outlet why Haverford arrests decorated veterans at their kids' graduations." He gestured to the crowd where dozens of phones were recording. "It's already viral. Your move." Thornton, her face pale, tried to regain control. "Colonel Harper, we respect your service, but rules are rules. We can't verify your invitation in the middle of a ceremony." Evelyn's voice was calm but unyielding. "Then you should have verified it before you sent armed guards to remove me. I'm not here to disrupt. I'm here to see my daughter graduate." Maya stepped closer to her mother, their shoulders brushing, a silent alliance forming. "If you remove her, I'm leaving too," Maya declared, her voice ringing across the quad. "I won't walk in a ceremony that humiliates my family." The crowd erupted in whispers, some parents cheering, others muttering about order. The band's music stopped entirely, the ceremony grinding to a halt. Evelyn looked at Maya, her heart swelling with a pride she hadn't felt in years. She'd missed so much, but in this moment, she saw her daughter's strength, her fire, and it was enough. The veterans tightened their formation, their presence a wall of solidarity. Storm caught Evelyn's eye, giving her a nod that said, "Everything. We've got your back." As campus police prepared to move in, the quad held its breath, the weight of history and justice hanging in the balance. Evelyn stood tall, her daughter at her side, her team around her, ready to face whatever came next. This wasn't just about a seat at a ceremony. It was about dignity, family, and the right to be seen. The Haverford University quad had become a stage, the graduation ceremony frozen in a surreal tableau. Evelyn Harper stood at the center, her Air Force dress uniform a defiant symbol of honor amidst the chaos. Her daughter, Maya Harper, stood beside her, their shoulders brushing in a quiet alliance forged in the heat of confrontation. Around them, 5 Air Force veterans Calvin Storm Mitchell, Javier Hawk Morales, Denise Blaze Thompson, Tyrone Ghost Reynolds, Leonard Doc Simmons, and Carla Viper Nguyen formed a protective perimeter, their presence a silent challenge to the campus security guards and police. Chief Michael Dorsey's face was a mask of frustration, his radio crackling as he barked orders for more backup. Dean Sylvia Thornton hovered nearby, her administrative composure fraying as the crowd's murmurs grew louder, phones capturing every moment, #Haverford discrimination now trending nationally. Evelyn's heart pounded, but her expression remained steady, her military discipline anchoring her against the storm of scrutiny. She felt Maya's trembling hand brush against hers, a fleeting touch that carried years of unspoken longing. For the first time in decades, Evelyn saw not just her daughter's anger, but her vulnerability, her need to understand the mother who'd been a stranger. "I'm here now, Maya," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible over the crowd's din. Maya's eyes, glistening with unshed tears, met hers, and in that moment, a crack in their estrangement widened, letting in the possibility of healing. The tension snapped as a new figure emerged from the faculty section. Professor Clarence Whitaker, 78, his frail frame trembling with righteous indignation, clutched a weathered archival box. His white hair caught the sunlight, and his voice, though quavering, carried the authority of decades spent teaching history at Haverford. "Enough," he shouted, his words silencing the quad. He shuffled toward Evelyn, the box cradled like a sacred relic. "This university has buried its sins for too long, and I will not stand silent while it disgraces one of its own again." Evelyn's breath caught, recognition flickering in her eyes. Whitaker had been her advisor in 1985, the only professor who'd supported her complaint about discriminatory grading. She thought him long retired, his voice lost to time. But here he was, his gaze fierce as he addressed the crowd. In 1985, Evelyn Harper graduated at the top of her aerospace engineering class, one of only 3 Black students in her program. Her thesis on gender bias in pilot selection was brilliant, but Haverford buried it. They erased her from the honor rolls, dismissed her complaints, and pretended she never existed. And today, They dare to treat her like a trespasser. He opened the box, revealing yellow documents, a copy of Evelyn's thesis, her graduation photo, commendation letters from her professors. He held up the photo, Evelyn's young face staring back, her cap and gown pristine. "This was deliberately excluded from the yearbook," Whitaker said, his voice breaking. "I saved these when I realized the administration was purging them." Haverford didn't just forget Evelyn Harper, they erased her to protect their image. The crowd gasped, parents and students leaning forward, some filming, others whispering in shock. Evelyn's throat tightened, the weight of that long-ago betrayal crashing over her. She'd buried the pain, focused on her career, but seeing her younger self in Whitaker's hands made it raw again. Maya stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the photo. "That's you," she said, her voice a mix of awe and anger. She reached out, her fingers brushing the faded image, as if touching a piece of her mother's past could bridge the years between them. "They took this from you. Why didn't you tell me?" Evelyn's voice was soft, heavy with regret. "I didn't want you to know how much it hurt, Maya. I wanted you to believe you could be anything." Maya's eyes welled up, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, a mother and daughter seeing each other anew. Storm seized the moment, nodding to Hawk Morales, who stepped forward with a leather portfolio. "President Prescott," Hawk called, his voice cutting through the crowd as he approached the stage, where the university president stood, his face pale. "This is evidence of Haverford's systematic erasure of Colonel Harper's achievements." He handed the portfolio to a stunned Prescott, who opened it to find meticulously compiled documents, internal memos from 1986 ordering the removal of Evelyn's records, comparisons of her stellar grades to white students who were honored despite lower scores, and emails from alumni confirming the pattern of discrimination. "We've been researching this for months," Hawk said, his tone measured but unrelenting. "Freedom of information requests, alumni testimonies, and your own archives. You can't bury this anymore." Prescott's hands shook as he scanned the pages, his administrative facade crumbling. The crowd's murmurs grew into a roar, students in the graduate section whispering furiously. Maya's voice broke through, sharp and clear. "This isn't just about my mom," she said, turning to face the crowd, her psychology training giving her words precision. "Last semester, I filed a complaint about biased grading in my department. I had statistical evidence showing minority students were scored lower than white peers for the same work. Dean Thornton dismissed it as unsubstantiated. They're doing to me what they did to her." Her accusation landed like a thunderclap, the crowd erupting in gasps and shouts. Thornton flinched, her eyes darting to Prescott, who looked increasingly trapped. Evelyn's heart swelled with pride, but also pain. She'd hoped Maya would be spared the battles she'd fought, yet here was her daughter, facing the same institutional resistance. She reached for Maya's hand, squeezing it gently, a silent promise to stand together. "You're stronger than I was," Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. Maya squeezed back, her resolve hardening. "I learned it from you, Mom, even if I didn't know it." The confrontation galvanized the students. Led by Maya, members of the Black Student Union stood, their gowns a sea of black against the white chairs. "We won't graduate in a ceremony that disrespects our families," one shouted, and nearly a quarter of the graduating class joined them, standing in solidarity. The band stopped playing, the ceremony now a distant memory as the quad became a battleground for truth. Social media exploded, with hashtag #HaverfordDiscrimination trending globally, news vans arriving at the campus gates. Evelyn felt the weight of the moment, not just for herself, but for every student who'd been silenced, every voice Haverford had tried to erase. Storm's voice cut through the chaos, directed at Dorsey. "You're on the wrong side of history, Chief. Let Colonel Harper stay, or you'll be explaining this to the world." The veterans tightened their formation, their eyes scanning the crowd, ready for any escalation. Dorsey's hand hovered over his radio, but the campus police officers hesitated. their resolve shaken by the growing unrest. Thornton stepped forward, her voice strained. "This is getting out of hand. Colonel Harper, we can discuss this after the ceremony." Evelyn's response was immediate, her voice carrying the authority of command. "There's nothing to discuss, Dean. You've had 40 years to address this. My daughter and her classmates deserve better than your excuses." Maya turned to the crowd, her voice rising with the passion of her activism. "This isn't just about one woman or one day. It's about a system that buries truth to protect power. If Haverford won't change, we'll make it change." The students cheered, their voices a chorus of defiance. Evelyn looked at her daughter, seeing the fire she'd always known was there, and for the first time, she felt they were fighting the same fight. The quad pulsed with energy, the truth no longer hidden, the institution no longer untouchable. As Prescott clutched the portfolio, his face grim, the stage was set for a reckoning that would echo far beyond Haverford's gates. The Haverford University Quad was a crucible of tension, the graduation ceremony derailed by a confrontation that had grown far beyond a single family's struggle. Evelyn Harper, 62, stood resolute in her Air Force dress uniform, her medals glinting like beacons of her unyielding dignity. Beside her, Maya Harper, 24, radiated a fierce resolve, her graduation gown a stark contrast to the fire in her eyes. The 5 Air Force veterans, Calvin Storm, Mitchell, Javier Hawk Morales, Denise Blaze Thompson, Tyrone Ghost Reynolds, Leonard Doc Simmons, and Carla Viper Nguyen maintained their protective formation, a silent wall of solidarity. Professor Clarence Whitaker's archival box lay open at their feet, its contents Evelyn's erased thesis, her graduation photo, exposing Haverford's buried history. Chief Michael Dorsey, his authority fraying, barked into his radio for county police reinforcements, while Dean Sylvia Thornton whispered urgently to President Leonard Prescott, who clutched the damning portfolio of evidence. The crowd was a sea of divided reactions. Minority families nodded in grim recognition, white parents shifted uncomfortably, and students stood defiantly, nearly a quarter of the graduating class refusing to sit. Social media pulsed with #HaverfordDiscrimination, live streams capturing every word, every gesture. Evelyn felt the weight of those eyes, but her focus was on Maya, whose hand still trembled from their earlier touch. The pain of their estrangement lingered, but in Maya's defiance, Evelyn saw a mirror of her own strength, a legacy she hadn't dared hope to pass on. "You're leading this now," she murmured to Maya, her voice thick with pride. Maya's lips quivered, but she nodded, her resolve hardening. "We're doing this together, Mom." A new voice cut through the chaos, commanding immediate attention. Judge Regina Coleman, 65, a federal judge and Haverford trustee, stepped forward from the VIP section, her judicial robes lending her an air of unassailable authority. Her dark eyes scanned the quad, settling on Prescott. "President Prescott, this institution has failed Colonel Harper and countless others," she declared, her voice resonating with the weight of law and morality. "You've been presented with irrefutable evidence of systemic discrimination, yet you stand here debating protocol while a hero is threatened with arrest. I demand an explanation now." The crowd fell silent, the gravity of Coleman's presence shifting the dynamic. Prescott's face paled, his hands tightening around the portfolio. "Judge Coleman, this is a misunderstanding," he began, his voice strained. "We're addressing the situation," Coleman cut him off, her gaze piercing. "This is no misunderstanding, Leonard. It's a pattern documented for decades, and it ends today. Colonel Harper, what does justice look like to you?" Evelyn straightened, her military bearing commanding the quad. She felt Maya's eyes on her, a silent plea for guidance, and her heart swelled with purpose. This wasn't just about her. It was about Maya, about every student who had been silenced. "Justice," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "requires 3 things. First, Haverford must publicly acknowledge its history of discrimination, including my daughter's complaint last semester. Second, a transparent review of all discrimination claims from the past decade, with findings reported openly. Third, an independent oversight committee with binding authority to enforce reforms. Her words landed with precision, each demand a bullet aimed at the heart of institutional denial. Maya's breath hitched, her eyes shining with awe. She'd spent years fighting for change through protests and petitions, but her mother's clarity, her strategic vision, was a revelation. She squeezed Evelyn's hand, a gesture that spoke volumes. "I see you now." The veterans exchanged nods, their pride in their commander evident. Storm's voice rumbled low, directed at Dorsey. "You heard the colonel. Stand down, or this gets uglier." Dorsey's jaw clenched, but the campus police officers hesitated, their hands no longer on their belts, sensing the tide turning. Another figure emerged, his slow, deliberate steps drawing every eye. General Arthur Langston, 80, a retired Air Force general and Haverford's largest donor, approached from the trustee section. His silver hair and tailored suit belied the military steel in his posture. He stopped before Evelyn, his eyes tracing her medals with a professional's respect. "Colonel Harper," he said, his voice carrying across the quad. "I flew in Desert Storm, adjacent to your squadron. Your reputation as a pilot was legendary, yet I failed to challenge the prejudice you faced. I'm ashamed of that silence, and I won't stay silent now." The crowd gasped, the weight of Langston's admission seismic. He turned to Prescott, his tone unyielding. "I've funded 3 buildings on this campus, but I'll withdraw every cent if you don't address this injustice. Colonel Harper deserves respect, not handcuffs." Prescott's face crumpled, the financial threat a blow he couldn't ignore. Thornton stepped forward, her voice conciliatory. "General, we're prepared to offer Colonel Harper a VIP seat for this ceremony." Evelyn cut her off, her voice like steel. "I don't want special treatment, Dean Thornton. I want equal respect for every parent here, regardless of skin color or invitation format." Maya's heart raced, her activist instincts kicking in. She turned to her mother, her voice low but urgent. "They're offering a seat now, but they erased you for 40 years. How can we trust them?" Evelyn's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. "We don't trust promises, Maya. We demand accountability. That's why oversight matters." The words struck Maya like a revelation, connecting her mother's battles to her own. She stepped forward, addressing Prescott directly. "We'll stay, but only if you commit to Mom's terms publicly, with clear timelines for implementation and regular reporting. Anything less, and I walk." The crowd erupted in cheers, students chanting, "Justice now." The veterans tightened their formation, their presence a physical embodiment of solidarity. Hawk Morales whispered to Storm, "Media's outside the gates. This is national now." Storm nodded, his eyes on Evelyn, who stood like a pillar amidst the storm. She felt the weight of history, her own graduation in 1985 flashing through her mind, her name mispronounced, her achievements buried. She'd fought then by excelling, but now, with Maya beside her, she was fighting for more than herself. This was about legacy, about ensuring no one else would face what they had. Prescott retreated to the stage, huddling with trustees and legal counsel, their faces grim as they pored over the portfolio. Thornton approached again, her tone desperate. "Colonel Harper, let's resolve this privately after the ceremony. We value our alumni," Maya interrupted, her voice fierce. "You don't get to hide this anymore. My mom's thesis is taught in military academies, but you buried it. I'm fighting the same bias in my classes, and you dismissed me. This isn't private, it's public, and it's now." The quad pulsed with energy, the students' chants growing louder. Evelyn looked at Maya, pride swelling in her chest. She'd missed so much, but this moment, this fight, was theirs together. She turned to Prescott, her voice a command. This is your choice, President Prescott. Acknowledge the truth and commit to change, or explain to the world why you arrest a mother for attending her daughter's graduation. The crowd roared, the pressure unbearable. Prescott stepped to the microphone, his voice wavering. Ladies and gentlemen, we're addressing a security issue. Colonel Harper, we invite you to join us on the platform. Evelyn shook her head, her voice steady. Not without your commitment to my terms. Maya stepped closer, her decision final. If my mom goes, I go. I won't graduate from an institution that dishonors my family. The trustees exchanged frantic glances, Coleman's judicial stare boring into Prescott. Langston's presence loomed, his threat of withdrawn funding a ticking clock. The students' chants became a drumbeat, the quad a crucible of change. Evelyn and Maya stood together, mother and daughter, their hands clasped, their resolve unbreakable. The veterans stood firm, their loyalty a testament to the power of collective action. As Prescott opened his mouth to respond, the quad held its breath, the future of Haverford hanging in the balance. NT, the air thick with the weight of history and hope. Evelyn Harper, 62, stood tall in her Air Force dress uniform, her medals a testament to battles fought and won. Beside her, Maya Harper, 24, gripped her mother's hand, her graduation gown billowing in the soft June breeze. The 5 Air Force veterans, Calvin Storm, Mitchell, Javier Hawk, Morales, Denise Blaze Thompson, Tyrone Ghost Reynolds, Leonard Doc Simmons, and Carla Viper Nguyen stood in their protective formation, their presence a living monument to loyalty. Judge Regina Coleman and General Arthur Langston flanked the scene, their authority pressing against President Leonard Prescott, who stood at the microphone, his face etched with reluctant resolve. The crowd, parents, students, faculty, held its breath, phones still raised, capturing the pivotal moment as #HaverfordDiscrimination trended globally. Prescott's voice wavered as he spoke, his administrative polish cracking under the pressure of the quad's collective gaze. Ladies and gentlemen, Haverford University acknowledges a failure in our treatment of Colonel Evelyn Harper today, he said, his words halting but clear. We accept her terms in principle, a public acknowledgement of our historical discrimination, a transparent review of past complaints, and the establishment of an independent oversight committee with binding authority. We commit to publishing a timeline for implementation within 30 days. The crowd erupted in cheers, students chanting, "Justice now," as the veterans exchanged nods of quiet triumph. Evelyn's chest tightened, a surge of relief mingling with the weight of decades of silenced pain. She'd fought for this moment, not for herself, but for Maya, for the students standing behind her, for every voice Haverford had buried. She glanced at Maya, whose eyes shone with a mix of pride and disbelief. "We did it, Mom," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Evelyn squeezed her hand, her voice soft but fierce. "You did it, Maya. You made them listen." The touch, the words, were a bridge across years of absence, a fragile but unbreakable connection forged in the fire of this day. Prescott gestured to the stage, his tone conciliatory. "Colonel Harper, Miss Harper, we'd be honored if you'd join us on the platform for the remainder of the ceremony." Evelyn hesitated, her eyes scanning the crowd, minority families nodding in solidarity, white parents grappling with the truth, students standing tall. She turned to Maya, deferring to her daughter. "This is your day. Baby girl, what do you want?" Maya's lips curved into a determined smile, her activist spirit shining through. "We'll go up there, but not as guests. As equals, fighting for change." Evelyn's heart swelled, a mother's pride overwhelming the scars of their past. "Then we go together," she said, and they stepped forward, hand in hand. The crowd parted as they approached the stage, the veterans trailing behind, their formation a silent honor guard. Chief Michael Dorsey stepped back, his radio silent, his authority diminished in the face of their unity. Dean Sylvia Thornton averted her gaze, her earlier dismissals now a shadow of regret. Judge Coleman and General Langston took their places beside Prescott, their presence a reminder of the power behind Evelyn's demands. As Evelyn and Maya ascended the steps, the quad erupted in applause, a wave of sound that transcended the moment, acknowledging not just their victory, but the larger fight for justice. The ceremony resumed, but it was transformed, infused with a raw, electric energy. The provost's opening remarks felt hollow against the backdrop of what had unfolded, and the band's music took on a triumphant note. Evelyn sat beside Maya on the platform, her eyes fixed on her daughter, who radiated a quiet strength. She thought of her own graduation in 1985, the mispronounced name, the erased honors, and how she'd swallowed the pain to soar higher. Today, she stood not just for herself, but for Maya, for a legacy that would outlast her. Maya leaned closer, whispering, "I didn't know you were this brave." Evelyn's throat tightened, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know you were either." When Maya's name was called, she crossed the stage, her gown flowing, her head high. Evelyn stood, her medals catching the sunlight, and as Maya accepted her diploma, their eyes met. Maya paused, then stepped into her mother's arms, their embrace a collision of years of longing, regret, and love. The crowd roared, the applause a thunderous affirmation of their bond, their fight. Evelyn held her daughter close, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Maya." Maya's voice broke as she replied, "I'm proud of you, Mom." The moment was theirs, a reclamation of family amidst the wreckage of institutional denial. Prescott approached the microphone, his voice steadier now. Before we continue, I'd like to invite Colonel Evelyn Harper to address our graduates and guests. The invitation was unprecedented, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable hours ago. Evelyn rose, her movements deliberate, her bearing commanding. She stepped to the podium, surveying the quad, hundreds of faces, some tear-streaked, others resolute. The veterans stood at the back, their eyes locked on her, their loyalty unwavering. Maya sat behind her, her gaze a beacon of trust. Evelyn's voice was clear, resonant, carrying the weight of her journey. "I came to Haverford today as a mother, hoping to witness my daughter's achievement," she began. "I stand before you now as an alumna whose story was erased, and as a woman who refuses to let that erasure continue." The crowd fell silent, hanging on her words. "For 40 years, I fought discrimination with excellence, believing it would change hearts and systems. It won me medals, but it didn't change Haverford. My daughter chose a different path, advocacy, calling out injustice with courage I didn't have at her age. Together, we've shown that change requires both, excellence that can't be denied and voices that won't be silenced." She paused, her eyes finding Maya's, a mother's love shining through. Haverford faces a choice today: commit to genuine transformation or hide behind empty promises. That choice will define its legacy, not its buildings or endowments. To the graduates, I say this: your degrees are yours, but your dignity is non-negotiable. Fight for it, not just for yourselves, but for those who will come after. The quad erupted in applause, students standing, parents cheering, the veterans saluting in unison, their gesture transforming the academic ritual into a moment of profound honor. As Evelyn stepped back, Prescott announced a new initiative, the Harper Scholarship for Minority Students Pursuing STEM, a first step toward acknowledging the university's failures. The ceremony concluded with an unexpected formation. The veterans joined Evelyn on the stage, standing at attention, rendering a formal military salute to the graduating class. Maya stood beside her mother, her eyes bright with tears, her heart full. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, the sound of promise of change, our recognition of courage in the face of injustice. Evelyn and Maya descended the stage, their hands still clasped, the weight of the day settling into a quiet resolve. Storm approached, his voice gruff but warm. "You did good, Colonel. Both of you." Evelyn smiled, a rare, unguarded expression. Couldn't have done it without you, Storm. Maya looked at the veterans, her voice soft. Thank you, all of you. They nodded, their bond with Evelyn extending to her daughter at a new family forged in the fight. As the crowd dispersed, Evelyn and Maya lingered on the quad, the sun setting behind Haverford's ivy-clad buildings. The day had begun with a text cold and distant, but it ended with a connection deeper than either had imagined. They walked toward the gates, their steps in sync, their future uncertain but shared. The battle for justice was far from over, but today they'd reclaimed something greater, each other. The Haverford University quad shimmered under the June sun, its ivy-clad buildings softened by a year of transformation. On June 11th, 2025, the campus buzzed with the familiar energy of graduation day, but there was a new undercurrent, a sense of reckoning, of hope earned through struggle. Evelyn Harper, now 63, stood at the podium as the commencement speaker, her Air Force dress uniform replaced by a tailored Navy suit, though her silver pilot wings were pinned proudly to her lapel. Her eyes, weathered but bright, surveyed the sea of graduates, their black gowns a canvas of potential. Beside her, Maya Harper, 25, sat in the honored guest section, her face radiant with pride. A year had passed since their confrontation had shaken Haverford's foundations, and today they stood together, not as adversaries of an institution, but as architects of its renewal. The quad was different now. A new building, Harper Hall, rose where an outdated science center once stood, its lobby a permanent exhibit chronicling Haverford's history of discrimination and the fight to reclaim truth. Evelyn's 1985 thesis on gender bias in pilot selection, once buried, was now required reading in the university's ethics courses. A plaque at the entrance bore her name, alongside a quote from her speech a year ago, "Your dignity is non-negotiable." The Harper Scholarship, established for minority students pursuing STEM, had already funded 10 recipients, their faces beaming from a banner above the stage. The Independent Oversight Committee Evelyn had demanded had published its first report, exposing decades of buried complaints and implementing binding reforms that rippled across 12 other universities nationwide. Evelyn's voice, steady and resonant, filled the quad as she began her address. A year ago, I stood on this ground as an unwelcome visitor, a mother hoping to see her daughter graduate, she said, her words carrying the weight of memory. Today, I stand as an alumna whose story has been reclaimed, and as a witness to what courage and truth can achieve. The crowd, graduates, families, faculty listened intently, some dabbing tears, others nodding in recognition. Maya leaned forward, her eyes locked on her mother, a quiet smile playing on her lips. She'd spent the past year at Haverford's graduate school, pursuing a master's in psychology, and their relationship, once fractured, had grown into a partnership rooted in shared purpose. Evelyn's gaze softened as she continued. I learned to fight injustice with excellence, flying planes through skies that told me I didn't belong. My daughter, Maya, chose a different path, advocacy, wielding truth like a sword to cut through silence. She paused, her eyes finding Maya's, a mother's love shining through. Together, we showed that change requires both, the strength to stand tall and the courage to speak out. Haverford's transformation is not complete, but it's begun, and it's your responsibility, graduates, to carry it forward. The students erupted in applause, their cheers a promise of commitment. Maya clapped hardest, her heart swelling with a pride she'd once thought impossible. The speech ended with a call to action, Evelyn's voice rising with conviction. Your legacy isn't in your degree alone, it's in the world you build. Fight for those erased, for those silenced, and never let your dignity be negotiable. The quad rose in a standing ovation, the sound a thunderous affirmation of her words. Maya stood too, her eyes glistening, and as Evelyn stepped back from the podium, their gazes met, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. A year ago, a text had sparked a reckoning. Today, their presence reshaped a legacy. After the ceremony, Evelyn and Maya walked across the quad, their steps slow, savoring the moment. The campus felt different, less imposing, more open. Students approached, some shyly asking for photos with Evelyn, others thanking Maya for her activism. A young black woman, a Harper Scholarship recipient, hugged Evelyn, whispering, "Your story changed my life." Evelyn's throat tightened, her voice soft. "You're changing mine." Maya watched, her heart full, seeing her mother not just as a hero, but as a woman who'd fought for her, even when she didn't know it. They paused near Harper Hall, its glass facade reflecting the setting sun. Maya traced the plaque with her fingers, her voice quiet. "When I sent that text last year, I didn't think you'd come," she admitted, her eyes meeting Evelyn's. "I was so angry, Mom. I thought you didn't care." Evelyn's chest ached, the weight of those lost years heavy. "I always cared, Maya," she said, her voice breaking. "I just didn't know how to show it. When I got your text, I thought maybe it was my last chance to try." Maya smiled, a mirror of Evelyn's rare grin. "You didn't just try. You changed everything." They grasped hands, the gesture now familiar, a tether through time. Evelyn thought of the past year, late-night calls with Maya, shared meals, tentative steps toward trust. They'd worked together on the oversight committee, Maya's legal mind complementing Evelyn's strategic vision. The process hadn't been perfect. There were still arguments, old wounds, but each step had knit them closer. "We're not done fighting, are we?" Maya asked, her tone playful but serious. Evelyn chuckled, her eyes bright. "Not by a long shot, baby girl, but we're fighting together now." Calvin Storm Mitchell approached, his familiar grin breaking the moment's gravity. "Colonel, you've got this place looking better than a flight deck," he teased, gesturing to Harper Hall. The other veterans, Hawk, Blaze, Ghost, Doc, and Viper, joined him, their laughter warm. They'd stayed in touch, their bond with Evelyn unbroken, and they'd attended today's ceremony as her guests. Maya hugged Storm, her voice sincere. "Thank you for last year. All of you." Storm ruffled her hair, his voice gruff. "Your family, kid, just like your mom." As the group dispersed, Evelyn and Maya lingered, watching the graduates celebrate with their families. The quad was alive with joy, but beneath it ran a current of purpose, a reminder of the fight that had reshaped this day. Evelyn thought of her own graduation in 1985, the sting of erasure, and how she'd carried that pain silently. She'd never imagined it would lead here, to a place where her name was honored, her daughter by her side. Maya leaned against her, her voice soft. "What's next, Mom?" Evelyn smiled, her eyes on the horizon. "We keep going, Maya. For us, for them, for everyone who's still waiting to be seen." The camera panned out, capturing the quad, Harper Hall, and the two women standing together, their silhouettes strong against the fading light. A voiceover began, resonant and warm. "Legacy reclaimed reminds us that justice demands courage, truth, and unity." Evelyn and Maya Harper fought not just for themselves, but for a future where no one is erased. Have you witnessed injustice that needs challenging? Share your story below, and let's build a world where dignity is not negotiable. Like this video, subscribe for more stories of transformation, and pass it on to someone who needs hope. Thank you for joining us in honoring those who stand tall, fly high, and never back down. The screen faded to black, the words Harper Hall, Haverford University, 2025 lingering, a testament to a legacy reclaimed, a family restored, and a fight that would echo for generations.